Welcome back to Vine Chat, a little offshoot of Wild Wine Life. And we are fortunate enough to have Gary Eberle, a longtime friend of Wild Wine Life and just a longtime friend. Here's one. Now, cab is your first love.
Absolutely.
Okay. What inspired you to start doing the Rhone varietals like Syrah and actually be the first guy to grow Syrah commercially?
When I was at Davis, and I already had a master's, so Davis was really the only school that you could get a doctorate in. And since I had a master's, plus it was the best school, it was the wine school. And one of the other graduate students was Brian Crozier, and he'd been working at Hardy's in Australia, and he came to get an advanced degree at Davis, and he brought a bunch of Hardy's wines, their Shiraz and their Cabernet Shiraz blends. Those convicts never learned how to spell, and it was funny because the wine was really distinctive, but there was no interest. And I remember, because I had Doc Olmo on my committee, and I said, Doc, why do we have all of these rum varieties and there's no Syrah? And he said, it's just one of those fluky things that somehow it got overlooked, or if somebody had brought it in, it wasn't done and it was, plowed under. And I got to the point where I was really interested in it. And I learned a lot from my professors about it. I asked a lot of questions, and I went to Darrell Cordy over in Sacramento. Darrell Cordy, the Cordy Brothers stores. He's one of the great wine gurus in California. And I learned a whole lot about it. I just said, well, I'm going to make Syrah. It's not. I don't like it as much as I do Cabernet, but it's probably my second. It's tied for second with a good Pinot and a good Syrah. I don't think anything quite lives up to a good Cabernet Sauvignon. But I got a hold of some wood through Doc Olmo from Chapoutier Vineyards in the Rhone, and I started planting them. And our Steinbeck vineyard now I believe the 8th or 9th vineyard I planted. It was in 1980, but it is now the second oldest Syrah vineyard in the United States. The vineyards I planted before that, with one exception, have all been replaced. But the oldest Syrah vineyard, I believe, is the Bear Vineyard down in Zaca Mesa that I planted in 1978 for Marsh Ream when he owned Zaca Mesa.
Wow.
That's when Jim Clendenin and Tolmac and Bob Lindquist were the cellar rats down there. And that was their exposure to Syrah.
I'm drinking your 2013 Syrah, and it's absolutely delicious.
Well, I hate to tell you this. I'm drinking some Viognier because it's just noon. It's just noon.
Yeah.
It's a little early for, this afternoon when I get out to what I call my Mondavi table out front, and I start talking to people and greeting people at the wine as they come into the winery. It'll be Cabernet.
Now you told me that you sold Randall Grahm his first Syrah cuttings.
Mm-hmm.
And
I sold him his first Syrah grapes.
His first Syrah and cuttings. Here's a question for you, if you can. Is there a story that you can tell about Randall hanging out at the house that you've never told before without anybody getting into trouble?
Yeah, I do tell this story, and when I first was in town, and when I was working at the Estrella, and that's where I had Randall was a friend. I can't tell you when we met, but he's one of the most interesting people in our industry. I mean, he's just A couple hours with Randall Grahm is a real education and a lot of fun. But I remember one Saturday night, and this was I was like watching Saturday Night Live. Uh, all the outside lights are off. It's 11:30, whatever, and the doorbell rings. Now, when the doorbell rings at 11:30, 12 o'clock on a Saturday night, you go, "Uh-oh, what's going on? What's wrong here?" And I went to the front door and I turned the outside light on, opened the door, and there's Randall. And he didn't even say hi. He just walked in the house and he said, "Do you know there's no one in this town that can repair a Citron?" And I'm going, "A Citron? It's probably the only one in the state of California, Randall." Because he's so crazy. But he was driving a Citron and he was bouncing through some vineyards, and a rock went through the oil pan, and nobody could repair it because nobody knew what it was. But we spent a lot of that night drinking Estrella wines and just having a good time. He is. If you can't have a good time with Randall Grahm, you really have some serious problems.
He has a very creative mind. I had the fortune and pleasure to meet him a few times, and it's very. I mean, I'm not quite sure which impressed me more: his version of the Divine Comedy with wine, or just everything he's done in wine. What do you think about him and Gallo teaming up?
I was surprised. I was really surprised at that. In all honesty, as the industry has gotten so different, I still see Randall every now and then. But back in the '70s and '80s, there were so few of us, and we all sort of hung out together. We knew each other. And Randall is, I'd become, when I was traveling out of state, really.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the people that I went to school with, like, Steve McRosty and Mary Edwards and Andy Quaddy and Randall Johnson, I see them every now and then, but it's not like, I mean, in the '70s and the '80s, particularly, hey, we were all younger too, and the things that we did then that were fun are now a chore. So, but yeah, I say he's just a cool guy, and I don't understand. I'm not. I mean, I haven't read that much. I know that he and the Gallos are working together on some stuff, but it's above my pay grade, and I'm not really sure, exactly what's going on. I know Randall has got this thing, sort of like what Kenny Volk did, about developing more obscure varieties of grapes that are good. I mean, you think about it, there's I don't know how many different varieties of Vitis vinifera around the world, and we probably know 50 of them in the United States, if that. So I think looking for the next varietal that really likes, California, I think is what they're trying to find out, because they have so many things to choose from all of, particularly the countries that were behind the old Iron Curtain, and even down into the Middle East, where Vitis vinifera really evolved. You can't get into Iran, and Iraq's not a real friendly spot. I'm sure that they will get the wood and propagate them, and Gallo has the money and the ability to do just about anything. And I wouldn't be surprised if Gena and John Charles get involved in it some way too, because there's another showman. You know, I look at Gena Gallo, because she is such a lady and very reserved and very proper. And then you get CharlesBossiet, and he's the P.T. Barnum. I mean, he's a party wherever he goes.
Any stories that you can repeat about about him?
No, I mean, I've been with them. I've had dinner with them a couple of times. I remember when he and Gena got the Mondavi award, the Mondavi Wine, Food, and Hospitality Award. It was maybe about 2 years before I won it. And it's the Disney people put it on. It's like 800 people in this big hotel with all the neat stuff that that Disney can do, and they really do it upright. I mean, everyone's black tie. And he was there, and in fact, we sat at the table with he and Gena, and it was just fun. He's a fun guy. I don't have the experience or the time with him that I had with Randall and Mr. Mondavi. Certainly not even close with Mr. Mondavi and some of the other people. But the times I've been around him, he's very erudite. He can talk on just about any subject that you want to come up with. He's very clever too. Yeah.
Now, one of the things I've always said that's fun in American wines used at the Whitehouse over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very fascinating that a particular president, you always could tell that when a particular president was in California, you always got orders for your Cabernet, and they even saw a bottle. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, my 1980 Cabernet, we had made it, and I really liked that wine. It was, I've been making wine for essentially a decade at that point, and it was a favorite. And the enology in 1982, the enology department, my 80 Cabernet was selected by the enology staff as one of 6 Cabernets to represent the university for their 75th anniversary. And David Berkeley, who was a wine merchant up in Sacramento, was Governor Reagan's wine guru at that time. And my 80 Cabernet, and I guess he sent a lot of my 80 Cab to President Reagan or Governor Reagan. And when Reagan became president, my 80 Cab was the first wine, by the way, to ever have Paso Robles appellation on the label. Before that, we were using San Luis Obispo. So it's the first wine to ever have Paso on the label. And when Reagan became president, he wound up taking a case of my wine when he went to China, which kind of scared me because I wasn't sure Reagan would ever take anything really good to the communists. But anyway, when Reagan would come out to the Western Whitehouse, the ranch, which is really a neat place, we would get a call, and they would want 2 or 3 cases of the 80 Cab. And I mean, I know it was up there with Thatcher and with the Gorbachev when they were at the ranch house. And I'll tell you, that ranch house, it sounds kind of romantic and everything. Whoa, this is the President of the United States, and the heat was 2 little fireplaces. The Reagan bedroom where he and Nancy slept, I've been to walk-in closets that were bigger. And I'll tell you, the other thing was the bed that they slept in when they were there was those old sort of wrought iron metal railings, headboard and everything. There are two single beds, and they were zip tied together. The President of the United States sleeping with his wife in two single beds that are zip tied together. Oh, man. But if there's an empty bottle of my 80 cab up in the kitchen at the Western White House, and in the Reagan Library down in Simi Valley, there's a full bottle of my 80 cab in the museum. So anyway, I'm not sure how much of a real wine connoisseur he was, but he had good recommendations from David Berkeley, and so I've got a couple of nice notes from President Reagan when we would send wine down to him.
But thank you again, and I really appreciate it. I'm Ray here with Mr. Gary Eberle from Eberle Winery. Don't forget to hunt a dream, and here's to living the wild wine life.
Good night, Ray.